We're looking at one American fascist dystopia after another with Paul Thomas Anderson's new film. I'm James Harvey. I'm joined by the editor of Film Stories magazine, Ryan Lambie. Say hello, Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
And we're talking about one battle after another. As always, this is a spoiler-filled chat. If you've not seen the film, go away because we're going to ruin everything immediately. Ryan, you wrote the film for filmstories.co.uk. What did you think of it?
It's terrific. And I don't remember writing the review because it was about 1 a.m. and I was on a train and very tired. But I remember the film clearly, and it's meandering, it's original, it's strange, it's deadpan, blackly comic. Yeah, it's one of my favourite films of the year so far.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable review. I mean, it's interesting that you say it's meandering and also thrilling, which is, I think it's an odd combination. It feels sort of it's a film. I think this is the one bit of contention that I've seen from people's reactions online is it's a film that kind of there's an argument to be made that you could cut out 20 minutes in the middle. I mean, you were saying before we hit record, it's a bit of a stoner comedy in places, and there's sort of there is a whole sort of 20-minute segment in the middle where Paul Thomas Anderson's stoner comedy roots, I mean, that he sort of, I mean, I suppose kind of came to the fore in his last film, Licorice Pizza. They kind of pop up and sort of takes away from the whole pacey, thrilling nature of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of it goes through these different phases. You know, you have this sort of opening, is it 45 minutes, I suppose? Maybe a little longer, where you see the lead character, Leonardo DiCaprio's character's past and his kind of revolutionary movement that he was part of in his 20s. I think some filmmakers may have been tempted to make that shorter, but I kind of almost admire the way that Paul Thomas Anderson isn't afraid to kind of go through these different phases in the film and different textures. Because I think that I'd say that probably the last 45 minutes to an hour is about as close as PTA has come yet to sort of directing a conventional thriller.
Yeah.
But the journey that takes you there, it kind of, it sort of moves through genres, through tones. And I think it's a sign of his skill that he kind of gets away with it so well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the close. It definitely feels like his most commercial film yet, but in a very sort of Paul Thomas Anderson way. Although I suppose in a way, I think what we've come to think of as commercial in the last few years is maybe a bit out of date, maybe? I mean, he's making a big sort of action thriller for the big screen when that doesn't seem to really have the same sort of mass appeal that it once did, maybe. But at the same time, it's from Warner Brothers, and they've given him, what was it, $120 million or something mad for to make this?
150, possibly. Yeah,
I think
a fair amount
yeah.
for such a esoteric film, because it's
Yeah.
not like we said, it's not one thing. Anyone going into it thinking that it's a conventional action thriller, is probably going to be a bit confused by it. But at the same time, it does feel like the work of a director who wants to entertain his audience.
Yeah.
I think he does want you to have a good time, even though some of the laughs in it and some of the moments in it are incredibly uneasy. The way that it deals with racism and the thing, anti-immigration and all these themes that are in it, can certainly made me sort of squirm uncomfortably in my seat at times. But it does. I'd say certainly it's probably the film that I've connected with of his the most since Magnolia. I mean, Magnolia is my favourite film of his, and I think Magnolia is still my favourite film of his, but this is the one that's come closest, I think, to sort of me kind of genuinely loving it rather than admiring it. There's lots to admire in The Master and Phantom Thread and There Will Be Blood, and um, but I didn't love them. I don't know how you feel
Yeah.
about his sort of more recent films.
I was going to bring up sort of respective histories of Paul Thomas Anderson films. I think my big confession is that I hadn't seen Magnolia until after I saw this film. And because, to be honest, Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, quite similar to you, he's one of those filmmakers that I've always found, especially because I started out watching his most recent stuff. I think, well, more recent stuff. I think the first film of his I saw was There Will Be Blood, and then maybe uh, Punch Drunk Love, which for whatever reason I just didn't really connect with, and then things like The Martian, Phantom Thread, and Licorice
The
Pizza.
Martian.
The Martian, The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson's The Martian. Oh, that'd be great.
Yes, we've got a sci-fi film yet.
He hasn't. We should pitch it to him. The Martian 2, with Paul Thomas Anderson.
He's left that to Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do staying in his lane.
It's just occurred to me that there's 3 major Anderson filmmakers with, Wes Anderson isn't initials, is he? Because I always got confused between W.S. Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson for a while. And now Wes Anderson was always in the band. Anyway, that's irrelevant.
Hans Christian Andersen.
Hans Christian Andersen, the famous
Julian
film director.
Anderson. Jerry Anderson.
It's a lot of Andersons.
Yeah.
A Paul Thomas Anderson Thunderbirds movie. I'd like that. That could be our pitch. That. Yeah, I mean, out of all of his previous ones, I think I most connected probably with Phantom Thread, and I love the soundtrack for Licorice Pizza. I think that's my favorite film soundtrack from the last few years. I think that's great. But I've always found him to be quite a cold filmmaker for my tastes, which is obviously it's no bad. It is just a matter of taste, really. And I've always found him sort of, quite clinical. I mean, clearly a very talented filmmaker. He knows where to put a camera, as this film demonstrates really well, I think, or particularly well. But for the most part, I found him a bit cold. Then I saw this. I did enjoy this. I don't know if I'm in the same sort of masterpiece 5-star camp as everyone seems to be on, but I did think it was really, really very good. And then I watched Magnolia, and Magnolia just sort of floored me, because I think that's such an emotional film, which feels so distinct from basically everything he's made afterwards. With this film, I mean, it's based on another Thomas Pynchon novel.
Thomas Pynch is his pet. Thomas Pynch is Paul Thomas Anderson's pet crab.
Pet crab, yes. I'd love a pet crab. But Inherent Vice was based on a Pynchon novel, and it seems that Paul Thomas Anderson's had been keen on him for a while. This one is sort of, I gather, very loosely based on Vineland, which is a book from 1990. It's sort of taking more small elements of it, or one story out of a bunch of different strands. I believe he basically he'd been playing with adapting the novel for a while, wrote a bunch of different ideas or treatments for a bunch of different films, and then sort of went, we kind of combined them all into this one. So it's sort of put Vineland through Google Translate a bunch of times and come out with one bottle after another in a creative sense. But the one thing I want to talk to you about really is that novel was set in 1984, I think. It's
Reagan era, wasn't it?
Yeah, like start of Reagan's second term, I think, was the idea. So then, because of that, the way the time jump works, going from sort of radicals in the 60s to sort of the Reagan era America, I think it's a really interesting choice to take it from that time period, especially when Paul Thomas Anderson has basically exclusively done period pieces since Punch Drunk Love, I think. It's really interesting to put that in the modern day. And I was wondering what you thought, how well that worked, I suppose.
There's 2 things there. I think number one, it feels almost strange having a film about leftist revolutionaries sort of set in a sort of slightly ambiguous present, because we don't really have them anymore. In the 60s, the Bader-Meinhof group, and which this seems to sort of loosely riff on. But they don't really seem to be a thing now. Whether they will be again, I don't know. Maybe they are. They do exist, and I'm just not aware of them. They're underground enough that I don't know about them. But also by kind of updating it, because it never really says, in the scenes where the early scenes where we see the younger Bob, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, we don't know what year that is. It's the Mexico border. They're a detainment camp, so we can presume it's probably around the late 2010s, the first Trump presidency, perhaps. But then it skips forward 16 years in time, and we catch up with Bob again as a middle-aged man. He's got, a teenage daughter played by Chase Infinity, and he's become this kind of stoner addict, terrible father. And so it's not really clear, like, when is that set? When is the bulk of the film set? Is it essentially set in the future? Because this presumably would have been, conceived and made before Trump became president, for the second time, I mean.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how of the moment it feels. If in a different timeline had Kamala Harris become president, there would be no ICE anti-immigration squads running around frantically deporting people and cramming children into detention centres. So presumably this film would have looked less of the moment had that happened.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that history's taken the way it has. So I guess the point I'm very ramblingly getting at is that this feels almost like science fiction. It feels like a dystopia. It feels like a United States taken to the extreme of what it is at the moment. It's become this kind of terrifying militarized state, because actually we see a lot of we see the military constantly, obviously through Sean Penn's antagonist, Lockjaw, Colonel Lockjaw, which is a brilliant name.
It's a great name.
I think
that's the best movie character name. Oh, actually, I like the Smoke and Stack twins from Sinners, but apart those are the only rivals, I think, this year for great character names.
But those are Anderson's interests. I was interested because I've not read Vineland either, to my shame. I'm thinly read on recent literature, but he's changed the names. Like these are his creations, so it's interesting how good they are. But it's very much, it's a militarized state. You don't see the police all that much.
No.
To my recollection, the cops never show up in the various kinds of shootouts and bank heists and things, but the military are constantly there, and the threat of being deported and is in the background. The film creates its own world, which reflects the present day United States, but is also, like I said, it almost feels science fiction or dystopian. I don't know if you got that vibe from it.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I was reading in an interview of Paul Thomas Anderson this morning. I think it was with the LA Times. And essentially, I don't know whether he said, it's hard to tell at the moment with this sort of film. I think we saw this with Civil War when that came out last year, where it's quite a similar film in a lot of ways. It's a very political action thriller with, something to say in it. And all through the publicity trail for that, Alex Garland and everyone are essentially trying to play down the whole political element to almost be like, oh, if you're a Trump voter, you can come and see this film and you won't be offended by pointing out blatant truths. But he was saying, because he's been trying to make this film, he's been thinking about making an adaptation of Vineland for 20 years. And his point basically in the interview is that you could have made this film anytime in the last 20 years. And I think actually that's kind of what he's getting at. If we were to assume that the second half of the film takes place in the modern day, then 16 years previously would have been 2009, which is, immediately after Obama gets elected. And I think his point really is, well, was in the article that because you could have made this film anytime in the last 20 years, it's just that now it's a lot more visible and it's obviously taken to a heightened degree, but this level of sort of anti-immigrant rhetoric, all these camps, Guantanamo Bay, even that sort of thing, the way America's been treating people it sort of sees as criminals for it's pretty much all of its history. It could have been made any time in the last 20, 200 years even.
Mm. Yeah,
Which,
the film drives at that too, doesn't it? Because there's the secret societies in it, the kind of KKK / Freemasons type ridiculous societies, which obviously
but
hark back to America's past, and also Bob DiCaprio's character makes a very pointed remark about America's history to the teacher, and about previous presidents and their leanings and things like that. So there's little things threaded throughout. But it's interesting because you do see the Trump wall. I think he shoots that quite pointedly. You see the slatty, ridiculous Trump wall that they built.
I thought they never got around to doing that.
They've got sections of it.
I thought it was just a big fence.
Well, that's kind of what they built. I mean, it's ridiculous. And he shows it. It's kind of like, it's quite beautifully lit, actually.
That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about Trump's wall from left of center.
Yeah, someone's actually made it look pretty on film. It's interesting that you mentioned Civil War, because it feels like there's like a kind of wave of these films. Because we've had Eddington this year as well. An interesting thing about Eddington did the similar thing that you described with Civil War, which is that it didn't want to be too openly partisan. It tried to kind of, it was about political polarization being hastened by technology and by social media during the pandemic, and how that's continued to impact us now with AI. But it tries to show leftists and the right wing as basically being hapless idiots. And I feel like this does that, but also I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson is totally open about how he feels, that he's very much on the side of the left, and the right wing characters in it are roundly idiots, sexually dysfunctional, cowards, hypocrites. And to be honest, I don't think there's a right way, wrong way of doing this. I liked Eddington, and I loved Civil War, but I just kind of like the cards on the table, fuck you in your face kind of attitude to this film. I think that's what cut through from right. Even when, I gave it 5 stars, but that's not to say that this is a perfect movie. I think it's 5 stars because I think it's an important movie, and I think it's going to piss off the right people. And I actually kind of looking forward to seeing what the reaction is to this from certain, sections of the media. Because like another film that this reminds me a bit of, and it's not just because I've seen it recently, is The Long Walk. Because that is also set in an America which is become a militarized fascist state. It isn't necessarily trying to make a political point, but in this moment it feels like one. And I'm actually slightly surprised that, for all the reviews that it's received, good reviews that it's received, and praise for its performances and all this kind of thing, there's not really been much of a backlash against the ending, which I won't spoil here, but which does involve violence of a specific type. And it's interesting that, does that mean that cinema has become such a kind of side interest, if you like, in culture? It's dropped down the rankings, if you like, to compared to things like YouTube videos and TikTok and all the rest of it, that people aren't even kind of being shocked about movies anymore. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I think just that point about how the way people react to movies has changed sort of in the last few years. I always think back to even when Parasite won the Best Picture Oscar in 2020, and Trump tweeted or said at a rally or something, why don't they make films like Gone with the Wind anymore? Which is obviously
What a choice!
what a
Of
choice.
course, he would
What a
choose Gone with
choice.
the Wind.
The sort of the classic film that everyone else has decided
Memory
maybe,
hold,
yeah,
basically
everyone's
memory hold. Let's just all just forget about that one.
yeah.
No,
But
Christ.
when he said that in 2020, and then I think I'm right in saying when Anora won it recently, which is, a much more controversial film than Parasite, which he took against because it was in Korean, rather than an American film. But something like Anora, which, despite being a sort of very indie American film, was about sex workers and Russian billionaires, and sort of in so many ways far more incendiary uh, than Parasite, but didn't feel the need to say anything about it. And I think it's kind of the extent to which films have really not. They are unfortunately struggling to cut through in the same way now, even compared to 5 years ago. Because even looking back on the discourse around Civil War, I mean, it's hard to get a more pointed uh, sort of takedown of the current state of America, really, than that film. And even that, it got a decent amount of coverage. I don't think it, set the world on fire in the same way that you might have expected it to.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think I'm quite like you. I think we were talking in the screening before we saw it, and I was saying I'm just a big fan of, because it's felt like for a really long time people have been really reluctant to make films actually set in 2025 or set in the modern day. I think sort of since COVID, because I think especially to do with everything to do with the pandemic, everyone would just rather we forgot about it. There's been so few films set around that time. And this year we've had Eddington. Before that, there was Dumb Money, the film about the GameStop
Yeah,
money, whatever
enjoyed that.
happened, stock shorting, whatever happened there. I don't do
It was
economics.
meme stocks.
Meme stocks, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But aside from those two, I'm kind of struggling to think of another film that is actually about life during the 2020s, specifically compared to an analogy for COVID, or taking place in, coincidentally the 90s or something like that. Just trying to wind back the clock to before all our brains got melted by phones and we started watching TikToks. But yeah, I'm so happy that this film exists because of that. It's just willing to look at the current moment in a really smart and a really coherent way. Like, I don't think there are any moments really in One Battle After Another which I think is every director's nightmare, where you stop and go, oh, that feels sort of cringy, or that feels like, why are you? I mean, even when the one that comes closest, which is when Leo DiCaprio's character is talking to his daughter about her friends, and is talking about pronouns and how it doesn't understand what pronouns a non-binary friend of hers wants to use. That is used more as like a character moment of him sort of turning against the modern day left in a way.
Or just how even somebody well-meaning can just become, just through the passage of time, just become politically off base. I think that was what it was designed to highlight. That when he was in his 20s, whenever the hell that was, he probably would have been up on all that kind of things. And the film does roundly show him to be a friend and an ally of, people from disadvantaged backgrounds, or minorities, and and this sort of thing. But then in this moment, in this particular moment, he's just totally off. And also, like, I think that's one of the things I kind of like is that it kind of humanizes him as being this kind of, he wants to be a good parent, but he just honestly does not know how. He was never given the blueprint. And he's totally driven by his own paranoia to the point where he comments on the color of her friend's car and says, "Red, it's a bit loud, isn't it?" So he expects her friends to drive around in a black car so it won't draw the attention of the CIA or whoever.
I think, isn't it an electric car as well? It is literally quiet. It's literally as quiet as a car can be.
Possibly it could have been. I don't know, but
Yeah,
yeah, I like that.
yeah, I did love how that moment was just so, because it was just perfectly captures him as like the confluence of essentially 60s hippie with grumpy dad who doesn't want his daughter to grow up, like as a trope, and it's just perfectly blending those two in a way that really doesn't sort of, it feels so off because it just both just feels so antithetical to each other. But I think that really works, and I think,
And it should be such a cliche as well, shouldn't it? The disapproving dad, it's something, and the teenager who just wants a bit more freedom and stuff. We've seen it a million times, but there's a kind of, there's an honesty to the writing and the performances that means
yeah,
it just gets away with it. I think, Chase Infinity, it goes without saying, everyone's saying the same thing. She's terrific in this film. And I think I hate to be one of those people that criticizes a film for what not in it, but I
mm,
actually would like to have seen a bit more of the build up there is their relationship before everything kicks off. Just a little bit, maybe one or two scenes, because it gives over an awful lot to Teyana Taylor's character Perfidia, who's
mm,
who's Bob's estranged partner and and Willa's mother, so the mother of Bob's daughter, and Bob's obviously raised Willa all by himself because she's fled to Mexico, having turned informant. It spends probably about 40 minutes um, with Teyana Taylor's character, and those scenes are great. But then she doesn't come back. I don't know how, if you felt like this, but I felt like the sort of rhythm of storytelling sort of made me think, oh, maybe at some point she is going to come back, because obviously that's one of the reasons why Bob is so bereft and so hopelessly drug addled, is because deep down he's heartbroken that the love of his life has gone. Um, and he just wants her to come back and be a mother to his child, and then she doesn't. I
yeah,
don't know. Maybe that's PTA kind of deliberately kind of playing with expectations, but I don't know
yeah.
if,
No,
if you
no,
think the same thing.
I know what you mean, because I think I felt in a way it would feel, you do expect that from the rhythm of storytelling, but I thought I really quite liked that she didn't come back, because I think,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean
yeah.
I mean there
It's not a
was,
criticism, but
yeah, but I think, I mean, one of the most heartbreaking scenes I thought was that scene quite early on where it's she's where she leaves, when
Mhm.
Leonardo DiCaprio's character's standing there with the newborn baby, and you can see how heartbroken he is, just going like, we've got, what are you doing? Don't go and rob a bank or blow up more telegraph poles.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
got a child. We can stop now. Um, and it's just a man who's clearly found something, spent his whole life sort of railing for a cause, and then has suddenly found something infinitely more important to him, and he just can't understand why she doesn't feel the same way. And I thought that was sort of brutal, but
And
I
I
just
liked
sort
as
of,
well, like how sorry to interrupt, but the in all the kind of the sort of various things that you see him doing, because he's an explosives expert, isn't he? When he's
yeah,
still Ghetto Pat or whatever his name is, his gang name. Um, he never really seems entirely comfortable with the life as a kind of outlaw and a kind of freedom fighter. He
no,
doesn't. But then when you see him with the baby and he's holding the baby and he's become a father, he looks totally at home and he seems totally at peace. And then it's Perfidia, who's like, so my nipples hurt. I don't feel like I'm a person anymore, and she just wants to
mm,
get back to the life of being a radical leftist kind of thing.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I thought things like that were really just really well illustrated, and pretty, subtly but effectively done.
yeah, yeah, it's really quite sweet, and I think it's quite telling that I think the first thing you see him doing is when they're discussing the heist that they're going to do on the immigration center, and he's got no idea what's going on. He's talking to his wife. Are they married at that point? Anyway, he's talking to his partner, who's the leader of this group. He's surely been told this a million times. He's like, well, what do you actually want me to do? Because we're not blowing up this place. And she's like, oh, just set off a load, this cause a distraction. And his job is essentially to let off a load of fireworks.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, you really get the sense that he's really not suited to this sort of life at all. I think we should talk about Leonardo DiCaprio in general, because I'm fascinated by his career in the last sort of 5-6 years or so. Because he's gone from, I think, out of all of, I think nowadays we're so used to a lot of the bankable stars on our screens are people who were sort of really at their most famous in about 2007, or maybe even earlier. And we've got so used to people playing, like people trying to play roles beyond when they really should stop. I think out of all of the sort of big movie stars of our era, Leonardo DiCaprio has done maybe the best job of aging his roles with him in a way. Because I think, I mean, he doesn't do many films at all. He's sort of, the last few years, he's done sort of a project every couple of years or so. But since he won his Oscar in 2016 for playing man who crawls through snow and mud and gets killed by a bear for 2 hours in The Revenant. Then he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he was sort of a washed up
Rick Dalton. Yeah.
Washed up movie star. Spent a lot of his time sort of sat on the sofa smoking, not really very good. And since then, he's done Don't Look Up, which is a film that I feel like people have entirely forgotten about, but it was huge, and I remember quite enjoying it at the time.
It's because it's a Netflix film. I have a feeling that Netflix is armed with one of those laser things they have in Men in Black, which makes you forget about the films you've watched on it.
That's what the logo does. Every time it comes up, the red light.
So what did I for dinner yesterday? I can't remember now.
What did I just watch? Electric State. What's Electric State? I never heard of Electric State. But
nobody has.
And then there's Killers of the Flower Moon, obviously, in 2023, where again he plays another character who's quite similar to this one, except sort of his evil, racist doppelganger, where he's just a bit rubbish at everything. But in that film, obviously, he's a bit rubbish at everything, and his uncle makes him poison his wife. That's a spoiler for Killers of the Flower Moon. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by the career choices that he's taken in the last few years, because he's taking really some massive hits to his ego. He seemingly has no ego when it comes to what he's showing on the screen.
He's not picking star vehicles anymore. He's taking on essentially character actor roles. And the interesting one was Killers of the Flower Moon, because originally he was in the version they were originally going to shoot. It was going to be more of a conventional thriller that was told from the perspective of the FBI guy, later played by Jesse Plemons. And then they retooled it, rewrote it so that it was about, the Native American side of it and their experience. And then so essentially he kind of became a supporting actor in the movie, which is kind of there's a refreshing lack of ego there. Yeah. I think the character that he reminds me of, that Bob reminds me of, is Rick Dalton, in the sense that he is so hopeless. You kind of wonder whether he's ever going to kind of snap out of it. Is there going to come a point where, like any hero in a conventional story, they rise to the occasion, and they put aside childish things, and they kind of, they do the heroic thing. And in this, PTA quite brilliantly just keeps deferring it and deferring it and deferring it, until the point where, I think for me, it's where he steals the car. Like, he manages to find a car in 2025 that you can hotwire still, which is impressive in itself. But then from the moment he gets in the car and that kind of, I mean, he doesn't change character magically or anything. He's still not brilliant. His whole decision to fire the sniper rifle when he does was ridiculous, because he gave away his position for no tactical advantage whatsoever. But like, you can see, I think the thing is it's so, films are so often, especially action thrillers, are about the the lie that we want to tell ourselves rather than the truth. And the truth is that most people would be like him in this situation. They want their daughter back. They're trying to do the right thing. Um, but he's not a hardened military extraction specialist or anything like that. So he makes
Yeah.
stupid mistakes. But
Everyone wants to be Benicio del Toro, and then everyone is
oh
Leonardo
man, yeah.
DiCaprio,
We have to talk
unfortunately.
about him because he's great fun. But yeah, the moment when he's got the car and like the engine sounds and the way that they film him driving around and the undulation of the roads and everything and the way that that's set up for a payoff you don't even realize is coming is just brilliant. As I write in my review, I feel that is such a good moment in the film that I have a feeling that other film directors will rip that off
Yeah.
at some point in the near future. You know, pay homage, should we say?
Yeah.
But
That was fantastic. I love that was my by far my favorite part of the film, I think, was that uh chase sequence where the road is undulating so much and then you just see the cars coming over the hill and you don't know which car's going to be there. It's brilliant. I'll
yeah,
tell you the
Phil.
shot that yeah, no,
Sorry,
sorry.
go on.
I'll tell you the shot that I really loved as well was when Willa takes the car. When she takes the car just after she's escaped from the man she's sort of been who's selling her or sort of
He's basically taken her off to be assassinated because nobody really wants to do it. So
yeah,
she gets handed down the food chain until they find some hoodlums that are gross enough and heartless enough that they could kill a young woman, defenseless
yeah,
young woman, essentially,
yeah,
or so they think anyway, defenseless. But yeah,
yeah. But when she steals the car and PTA attaches the camera to the open door of the car, then as the car pulls out, the momentum slams the door shut, and the
yeah,
camera stays with it. And the focus puller on that they need a raise because they were somehow managing to keep her in shot for that entire thing. I saw that and I just thought, and this is a thought I had quite a few times in the film. It's just fucking cool. It's just it as sort of inept and bumbling as everyone in it is. It's just a really cool film,
Mm.
where it's got this big political message, and it's got a director who so clearly is just at the absolute peak of his powers. I mean, we've spoken about car chases. I don't think just cars in general have been shot as well as this for a long, long time. I think
Yeah.
for someone
I don't
who's
think
never,
I don't think I've seen some car, like not just car chases, but suspense sequences involving cars that have been this interesting since Ronin, the John
mm,
Frankenheimer film. It's interesting you mentioned that the car door thing because with the camera, because I think he's quoting himself to a degree there because there's a shot very much like that in Magnolia.
mm,
Where John C. Riley's cop character is getting in the car, and then the car it's not it's the context of it is different, but the actual camera move is the same. The camera is on the car door and it follows it as it swings shut. And interestingly, Zach Kreger is obviously a big PTA fan because he kept mentioning Magnolia in the build up to the release of Weapons, and Weapons actually has the same camera move. It's what's his name? Luke's Aiden Ehrenreich's cop character in Weapons. He shuts his car door and the fucking
yeah,
camera is attached to it. It's funny. It's like 2025 is the year of car door cams.
yeah,
But no, he's just got such he's got such an iron ear for rhythm and the pacing of scenes. And yeah, the way that it all kind of comes together in that sort of final sort of half an hour or so is just terrific. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned Benicio del Toro. There are so many sort of cool kind of secondary characters in this. It's an ambitious movie in the sense that it sprawls all over the place and time and locations, but there's not a ridiculously huge cast of characters. It's not as I don't think it's certainly not as narratively complex as Magnolia.
no,
But yeah, the kind of the supporting cast is terrific.
no,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
uh,
I think in general, I think it's definitely his most the his most plot forward, I'd say, maybe. I mean, film in a long time, and also the most simple A to B plot I've had in it. I mean, if you try and think of what's the plot of Licorice Pizza or Phantom Thread or The Master, I
Or even
you
Inherent Vice. Inherent Vice. One of my beefs with Inherent Vice was that after a while, it's kind of like, okay, this is very nice, and I like all these performances, and this is all very funny, but where is this going?
yeah, what the hell's going on? But yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, you never have that problem here because it is fundamentally just a really simple story of uh former terrorist man, evil army man wants to get him,
Mm.
kidnaps his daughter. That's man wants to find daughter. It's sort of it is a straight down the middle action
It's Taken.
movie.
It's a Taken film.
It is just Taken. It's PTA does Taken,
Mm.
and yeah, I think for someone who's never directed an action movie before, really, I think he's got such a good eye for, like you say, the rhythm of an action scene and just how to make. He clearly just has wanted to do car chases for a really long time, and now is
Yeah,
finally
I'm
had a chance
slightly
to do
annoyed
it.
that he hasn't done them before. It's like,
Yeah,
it's where have you been? Why have you not done this before?
why have you been making stupid films about English dressmakers when you could have been showing cars screeching around hills and people shooting each other? Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I suppose as well. Only
Oh, can we
sorry.
talk about before you move on? The guy who's the guy who's basically he's like the Terminator in a Lacoste t-shirt.
Yes, John Hugenhaker.
That's it.
Hugenhaker. He's one of
He's
those faces
great.
that you recognize, but yeah, he is great as member of. Oh, we should mention the name of the club actually. It's the Christmas Adventurers
Christmas
Club,
Adventurers.
which is such a fun, just a perfect. I mean, yeah, like back to the topic of Paul Thomas Anderson coming up with some brilliant names. The Christmas Adventurers Club is such a perfect name for a KKK style secret society of nut jobs.
Yeah, I like the fact that he didn't want to leave there he didn't want there to be any ambiguity over whether or not we're supposed to think they're cool or not. It's
Yeah,
like, no. This is absolutely pathetic. These people
yeah.
are pathetic, and their club is pathetic.
You've got Sean Penn crying because because he's getting emotional at being invited to that actually the moment that really got me as well was at the end when he genuinely starts crying because they've let him into this really
He's
ordinary
finally
looking
gotten
office.
into the club.
Well,
Yeah.
it's just an office. Like, yeah, it's like, this is your office. And he's like, oh, it's literally just like one computer, a desk, a few filing cabinets. And he's crying. Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. But yes, no, yes, side characters and action.
Mm. Yeah. 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 Benicio del Toro is great. It's one of those kind of characters that could have been kind of nothing, but he makes so much out of it. And yeah, Regina Hall, the Empress,
Regina,
she's
I
very
think.
good. Yeah, 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 and Alana Haim, she turns up from Licorice Pizza as one of the revolutionaries as well. Yeah, it's just yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've kind of lost the thread a bit, but yeah, great supporting cast.
Speaking of John Hugenaker, I'm so curious what Lacoste paid or didn't pay to get their logo on his polo shirt.
Yeah,
Because
I was wondering about that. Like, can they do that?
I mean, because it's a night. It must be a nightmare for Lacoste's branding team where you see that polo shirt and everyone goes, I know exactly what kind of person you are, and you are
You're a racist
far-right
Terminator.
Christian loser, and you sort of think, well, who? Because ordinarily with that sort of stuff, you get so many people bidding to have, and in that case, it would have to be Lacoste. They're so specific that it would have to be them. And I don't hate Lacoste's t-shirts and stuff, except you just see it on a polo shirt, and you know how it says so much about the character, and you know for a fact that it would have had to have cleared that with somebody. But why on earth would their brand team agree?
Was it
Fight
Fight Club where the studio insisted that there had to be Pepsi vending machines in the film, and
It might have been.
David Fincher fought against it. In the end, was right. So okay, we'll have Pepsi vending machines. So he put them in all the worst scenes in the film, like the ones where, what's his name, Edmund, the night store owner, like the shopkeeper
Yeah.
guy. He's getting threatened with a gun. You could just see the Pepsi logo in the background.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think it's like in what was it? It was in Superbad as well, wasn't it? Where I think was it the PS2 or the Xbox? It was a
oh no,
games
yeah, yeah,
console.
yeah.
I can't
No,
remember
it
which
was
one. And
Sony because it was Sony.
yeah,
It was PlayStation. Yeah, they said that. What's his name?
Jonah
It,
Hill's character
it was
was
too
so
disgusting to
reprehensible
touch.
that
We can't have him touching our products. He wasn't allowed to touch the controller.
and yet Lacoste are absolutely fine with evil Terminator Man. Um,
Makes you wonder what
uh,
they told them. So it'll be prominent. You'll see the logo prominently. Oh yes, yes, you'll see the logo.
and it's Warner Brothers, so they'd just seen F1 and they thought, oh, this is going to go great. We're going to be in a big Warner Brothers film. Our logo's going to be really prominent. The guy's in a car, and then
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
no,
it's another car movie. Yeah, don't worry about it.
with great product placement. Um, but yeah, I'm so curious about that. But yeah, I think we haven't talked enough about the score. Actually, I think is probably the big thing that's missing. Johnny Greenwood did scores. I think he's done like six about. He's PTA's
I think this is
regular.
his fifth. I think it might be his
I think this
fifth.
is his sixth, isn't it? Or is
I
it
don't
his
know.
seventh? I'm sure. I'm
Can I
sure I read
ask
earlier
yourself?
today that Johnny Greenwood has done six, but I don't know if that's including this one.
Hmm.
Don't make me tell you what they are because I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head.
But no, he's scored all of his recent films basically over the
Yeah,
last sort of 15 years or so.
yeah. But I thought this one was. I have to say probably his best work so far. It was brilliant, and I think so. There's barely a second in the film that isn't scored, to some degree, which I think is something that I think it has in common with Magnolia, where that film sort of leans very heavily into a very different score because that's a much more sort of traditional John Williams-y style sweeping orchestral thing. And then this just feels much more modern, kind of pulsing. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, it's the same as the one, that sort of clip in the trailer. But I think it was, yeah, I thought the score was just brilliant and really did so much to, like you say, keep that pace, keep the action movie pace going.
Yeah, maybe it was that helps kind of meld all the different kind of tones and genres together as well, because
Yeah.
it does what the film does, which is that it treads the line between quirkiness, uneasiness, and that kind of propulsion that a thriller needs. It always feels like it's going somewhere, and that's the good thing about the movie is that although it is meandering and long, it's 160-ish minutes, isn't it? 162
Yeah.
minutes, something like that. It always feels like every scene has a point. There is a reason why we're seeing what we're seeing. Yeah, it's a terrific score. Yeah, it's definitely my favourite of Greenwood's scores for PTA to date.
Yeah, and I think it's again, like you saying, you don't like to criticize a film for something that it isn't. One of my least favorite bits of criticism for a film is that it's too long because I think it's such an. I don't know why I hate it. It just feels like such a good and easy default thing to say about any film where you think, well, did you really need that bit? But I really think this was about 20 minutes too long, which is such a cliche. But I think that it does start to meander a lot in the middle, and I think that is sort of a big that is the one part that I thought maybe fiddles with momentum a little bit. But even having said that, I don't think it feels like 2 hours 40, which for a film that is 2 hours 40 is really impressive. I think, you look at your watch and you'll find an hour and a half's gone by before you can blink, really. It's so propulsive. And I was interested to see that apparently this was the first time that PTA had agreed to have what are they called? Test screenings. Yeah, it was the first time he'd agreed to have test screenings since I think Boogie Nights.
Interesting.
I want
I
to
hadn't read
say,
that.
which after those he cut 10 minutes off the film. which is so interesting because it does feel like he's sort of committed to making something, yeah, like you said, more commercial than
Mm,
his recent stuff. I mean, that comes with a $120 million price tag, really.
mm. Yeah,
But
yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of in that kind of mix of genres and thriller and drama that also has like a kind of political conscience. Reminds me a bit of Hell or High Water. It's a
mm,
film I bang on about a lot from 10 years ago. That's a terrific thriller, and it has a similar uh, sense of an uneasy sort of look at America, and in a way that we don't necessarily see in film that often, while also feeling like like a classic American film, if that
yeah,
makes sense. Like this, one battle after another could be sort of there's parts of it that wouldn't look out of place in like from a 70s thriller or a western or you know um, it's really interesting um, the way that it straddles genres.
yeah.
Hmm,
I do think it's. When you said classic film, I think I do. It's so strange watching this film and feeling like uh, this is almost certainly hyperbole, but I've seen it in plenty of places where you do sort of feel like you are watching a classic getting like coming before you. I mean, you can easily see that One Battle After Another coming up in conversations with stuff like No Country for Old Men or
hmm. And it feels like
um,
that as well, doesn't it? It
yeah,
feels of a piece with that in terms of genre and stuff.
yeah, or even other big action. I mean, the weekend I was rewatching The French Connection and
Mm,
uh, then things like Chinatown as well, and you just sort of think like you can see it coming up in these sort of epic
mm.
crime thriller sort of movies in the same conversation, which is, I mean, it's hard to give
Heat to
higher
extent.
praise than that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I mean we've talked earlier about like is cinema important enough for people to get angry or like cause controversy anymore.
Yeah,
But I think all that's true. I do wonder, like it's not what it was culturally. It's not the force that it was. But at the same time, it does. I'd cautiously wonder with the sort of crop of films that we're having recently whether it's kind of certainly American cinema's kind of found its mojo again a bit. It
mm,
sort of feels angrier and like weirder and like it wants to say something and it wants to warn people about something. All the
yeah,
films that we've talked about, like Civil War, like Eddington, like The Long Walk, like Sinners, all these films actually have something pertinent to say and honest to say about America and where it's going and where it's come from. I think Adam Curtis. I can't remember the exact quote from him, but I'm paraphrasing. But he said something about you can tell a lot about America by the stories that it tells about itself.
mm,
Um, and this feels like this feels like a kind of like an important film. I hope
yeah,
this does well. I don't know. It's not out yet at the time of recording. We know that critics like it, but that doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of
yeah,
box office.
yeah,
So it'd be interesting to see, will audiences embrace it like they did Sinners? Because, despite Warner Brothers seemingly not wanting it to be a hit, it was a hit.
yeah,
Um, you know, um, and Civil War did well for A24, albeit on a lower budget. But then, like Eddington was not a hit. I don't know if it's because Eddington was about COVID. It was set in the COVID era, and people just aren't ready for that. I don't know if that's just because it was too kind of odd for people because it's Ari
yeah.
Aster and he's a deeply odd man,
I,
which I love him for.
yeah.
But
I think Beau is Afraid might have put a lot of casual Ari Aster enjoyers off.
yeah, anyone
Um,
anyone that thought they knew what they were getting with an Ari Aster movie had that well and truly put to bed with
yeah,
with Beau is Afraid. um, so it'll be fascinating to see how it does. And like I said,
yeah,
it deserves to do well. I feel like if this was either 1999, the year that Magnolia came out, or the 1970s when The French Connection came out, when grown-ups were going to see grown-up movies, um, it would have been a hit, especially with Leonardo DiCaprio in it, when
Yeah.
stars meant something. But now, like, all bets are off. People don't necessarily go to the movies because Leonardo DiCaprio's in it. People don't necessarily go to the movies because it got a good review. Um, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's got a chance?
I uh I hate to be pessimistic. I think there's no way it's going to make its money back at the box office. I mean, again, I hate talking about the box office like it, not
Mm,
like it matters, because it does matter, and I appreciate that it matters. I think it is just so tempting to turn every conversation about a film's worth into how much money is it going to make for Warner Bros. Shareholders, and I think there's no way it's not going to make a profit, because I think crucially, I my more uh my more optimistic opinion is that it's going to sweep the Oscars
mm.
and the awards race, because it's Paul Thomas Anderson. I can't remember. Did he remind me? Did he win Best Picture for There Will Be Blood? Or did
Yes.
Yes, he did. But that was
Was
nearly
that
nearly 20.
2007?
Yeah, nearly 20
Yeah.
years ago. Um, so there's an element of it could well be his turn.
Mm,
Aronofsky, it's you've been universally sort of beloved by critics. It has the potential to be, uh, if not popular in the cinema, I think it's definitely a film that will last, and I think it's a film that will
mm,
do really well on streaming, because it is genuinely just really entertaining.
mm,
Um, I think, unfortunately, in the current climate, I don't think people will go to the cinema to see something like this anymore. Or at least not enough people. And also, then again, you have to look at PTA's sort of back record. Where There Will Be Blood is his most profitable film that made something like $70 million, which is,
mm.
you
Still not
know,
a huge amount, is it?
yeah, it's pretty much only a bit more than half the production budget of this. So
Mm,
you sort of you can, maybe that is a slightly less pessimistic view, in that it's not that cinema has, dropped in value so much amongst moviegoers, except that people have never been that interested in seeing his films at the box office. I don't know, but it, yeah, I'd be very surprised if it turned into a box office hit. I mean, it'll be on streaming in a month, which doesn't help. And
mm,
that is the hill I will continue to die on. That if you want people to see stuff in the cinema, just everyone has to stop putting stuff on streaming a month after it's been out.
mm.
Um, but no one's been listening to me for 5 years, so why would they start now?
The
Anyway,
fools.
um, yeah, I've been sent so many emails to David Zaslav, and he won't return my calls. Um, but yeah, I do think I'd be so surprised if it doesn't at least get you know something like 12 nominations at
I think
the
Chase
Oscars.
Infinity's got in with a shout for supporting actual best, something like that. I
Yeah,
think she might, and I think maybe Sean Penn.
Sean Penn. We haven't even talked about Sean Penn. He's fantastic in it. He's
Mm.
hilarious and has such a wet mouth in this film, and a funny walk, and he's just perfect. I think he is definitely in for a shot of best supporting actor. Um, in terms of there's almost I mean, best actress. I think it will struggle for, because I don't think there is one female lead, um, particularly. But there's in every other category, I can see it pretty much. I can see it at least getting a nomination, if not a win. And as we saw with Anora, I think that can do huge things for just your visibility. Even when Oscars don't matter as much as they used to,
Mm.
that can still do huge things to your visibility and your sort of endurance.
Mm.
Um, so my pessimistic take is that it won't make a load of money in the cinema, um, even though it looks great and you should see it in a cinema, because it is so loud as well. Just the sound design's fantastic, like Civil War, where
Mm.
you really hear those bullets just going for it. It's brilliant, brilliant stuff. But it won't make loads of money in the cinema, but will sweep the awards and will be consistently pretty prominent on streaming services for a very long time, and will make Warner Bros. A lot of money from that. Um, and I think that is more or less, after that very long rant, about where we should end. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. If you want more Film Stories nonsense, we're both from Film Stories, by the way. I didn't tell you who I was. You'll never know. Uh, if you want more Film Stories movie nonsense about TV, gaming, films, all that sort of stuff, head to filmstories.co.uk or follow us on any social media platform you can think of at Film Stories or at Film Stories Mag. You can listen to the Film Stories podcast with Simon Brew, wherever you get your podcasts, where we've got regular interviews and behind the scenes stories of all of your favorite movies, past and present. And we've also got the Film Stories Podcast Network, which has a load of shows about all things filmy, nerdy, and niche, from everything from vampires to DC comics to anything you can think of, really. So do go check those out. You can look on our website and you'll find all sorts of links and stuff there, I'm sure. That's about everything you've got to say, I think. So all I've got to do is say goodbye from Ryan. Ryan, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. And I've been James Harvey. Goodbye, everybody. Subscribe. Like and subscribe. There's a button. There's a
Click
button
that
below.
bell icon.
Like and subscribe. Bye, everybody.
Bye.